It's a good point. Actually, unlike Maze we would have done in the past in Halloween Horror Nights, one of the big differences about this permanent attraction is that it has a much higher level of special effects, and that's really where Greg and his talented artists at K&B come in, because for the first time ever, Greg's working on our team. He's actually, providing all of the aesthetics for all of our animated figures. So every walker you see that's an animatronic figure in the attraction comes actually off the molds of K&B. So it's probably a little more than half and half, probably leaning a little bit more to the side of the animatronics. But Greg, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what you've been doing for us on the animatronics side.
Yeah, every season we create additional molds for different zombie gags. There was a scene in season 2 when Lori crashed her car and the zombie stuck his face into the window and ripped its face off. And so that was Joe. It was just here. Joe played that zombie, and we used that head mold of him as one of the walkers in the attraction. So sort of eagle-eyed viewers will go through and might recognize specific walkers in this attraction from their faces. There also is one we did a bus for Charlie Collier, who's the head of AMC, because he wanted a zombie bust of himself, and so we did a head cast of him and we made a zombie bust, and I shipped it to him, and I think after a couple days his kids freaked him out. So he's like, I couldn't really keep it in my office because my kids kind of got freaked out. So Charlie Collier has a cameo in the attraction, so AMC's got their eye on it, obviously, with Charlie's head in there. So it's been really fun. Like there are gags specifically from episodes that I directed that we recreated. So we used the same molds from the same puppets, and it's really fun. I mean, I walked through yesterday, just the scale of it. It just feels like the supersized version. In terms of just scale, it's really epic, and it's great. I was blown away walking through yesterday. When I flew back from Atlanta on Monday night and then came in yesterday. And John and his team, it's for me, it's very exciting to be working with John and Universal Studios Hollywood, because John and I are like brothers. We both love the exact same thing. Pick up a conversation, start talking about Frankenstein or Wolfman, or so it made it really fun. It's been a really fun experience building all this stuff.
You have a question right here?
Very recently I interviewed Aaron Paul, and he was...
I'm so sorry. I should make a note. I apologize. I just want to make a note. I'd just like to request that everybody keep all of your questions in the context of the attraction, as opposed to going beyond.
So it's in the context of walkers.
It's in the context of walkers. That's fine, as long as it's within the scope of the attraction.
And Aaron Paul said he would love to play a walker in Walking Dead. Have you ever thought about inviting other actors to do this little parts?
Generally speaking, we don't, only because of the fact that we don't want, when people are watching the show, we don't want them to be taken out of the story by looking for, oh, where's that zombie or that zombie. So it does, in certain instances, lessen the impact of the show if you're spending a lot of time looking for Easter eggs. Well, that doesn't mean that we haven't done it, and that doesn't mean that Aaron and I haven't talked about it, because I've known Aaron since Breaking Bad, because we've done his makeup on that quite often, and I saw him recently. He's like, listen, man, I'd still love to do it. I think if we did it, nobody would ever know about it. Or you would find out like a year later.
So I think that's like Batman in the 60s where they're climbing up the building and someone opens
the window and pops their head up. See, that's what I'm doing. I think that's something that could probably happen, but it's not something that we would advertise on the show. Like, hey, tune in Sunday night to see Aaron Paul's Walker, because then people are going to not be sort of invested in the story, and that's what's most important for us.
Hey. I'm Kira from Video Capitals Features. You guys have 6 seasons of creativity to be able to pull into this attraction, and you've just stated that you're actually implementing a lot of that. What are the plans as the series goes on, and we hope it never ends, but as the series goes on, that you guys implement upcoming seasons, upcoming zombies into the attraction?
Well, that's, one of the things when you're designing a permanent attraction, you start, a lot, the design cycle is a lot longer than a temporary attraction. So we started this over 2 years ago. We went through a dozen iterations of what ultimately the attraction ended up being. But we left a little bit loose because when we were finishing our design, it was the end of not this previous season, but the season before it. And so I had a lot of conversations with him as we were getting towards the season finale that he directed. And he kept, saying, hey, I think you might want to consider, keep your eyes open when you watch the show. And we actually incorporated a lot of those ideas into the attraction and made changes.
I mean, it's been, and to me, that's one of the values of my partnership with John is that I can help guide them without ruining future episodes by saying, it might not be a bad idea to introduce one of these people who could end up theoretically being one of Negan's group as part of the attraction so that it feels relevant. I mean, we really want to make sure that the attraction always feels as tied into the show as possible. So we've been able to dial that in a lot with just conversations. When John has pitched me their creative and sort of walked me through what they were doing, I found moments and key points where I was like, oh, maybe we can introduce something here that will take us into season 7. And it's fun because there's a lot of cool Easter eggs in the ride that you'll find.
Even like the Savior's Whistle, that was something that wasn't in the attraction at all in the beginning because we hadn't heard it.
Because the episode hadn't aired yet.
Yeah, but as we got closer to the season coming to the conclusion, especially watching the finale, that Greg, literally the night the finale aired, I was like, the next day calling him and going, we're going to make some changes because we wanted to, when guests go to July 4th when it opens, we want them to feel like it's picking up right where the show left off, and I think it does. And then, as designers, we have a dividing line that we've always had in our head of, in the future, wherever the show goes, if we want to make changes, we know where that line is and what will change and what won't.
Yeah.
I have a question over here. More of a general question, actually. Why The Walking Dead attraction for Universal? We all know it's hugely popular here domestically. Obviously, Universal is a big international attraction too. So did you guys see that kind of demand globally to make this into a permanent attraction here?
Well, I always say about The Walking Dead, and I've been, obviously working with Greg almost since the very, very beginning of the show, but I think when the show started, and I'm sure Greg can elaborate on this, you could have said, oh, this is a horror television show, but it very, very quickly transcended the narrow confines of what we think of as horror and became a pop culture phenomenon. I mean, when a television show beats football on a Sunday night, in my lifetime, I've never seen that happen. So that it's hitting a chord far broader than, a genre that maybe in the past was thought of in very limited terms. Now, everybody is tuned into it. So as a brand, it becomes a perfect brand for us to look at for the park. Greg, if you want.
Yeah, but that's a great point because internationally the show is hugely successful.
Yeah.
And I traveled over to Europe with Michael Cudlitz and Josh McDermott and Ross Marquand, and I went with Andy and Norman to Japan 2 years ago. And you walk down the street and people stop you in the street and recognize people from the show. So the show has an amazingly expansive reach. For me personally, and I think John would probably agree, I love horror stuff. I mean, I grew up working on Day of the Dead with George Romero, and to me, it's sort of in my blood, I think. So to be able to have a house of horrors that is represented by The Walking Dead, in the exact space where horror was almost created for feature films in terms of Frankenstein, that kind of stuff is very exciting. But Halloween Horror Nights, the only depressing part about Halloween Horror Nights is that it's only from, well, John will kill me if I say this, from September to the beginning of November. Because these guys kill themselves every year to do it. But it's fun because it's the expectation of waiting for it. Oh, I can't wait for Halloween Horror Nights because I love the experience of this maze and that maze, and I think those are very, very fun because you're sort of getting, it's a much more quick, fast-paced sort of going through this maze and being scared. Now you get a chance to do it all year round, and it's a different experience. It's very much more immersive than going through a maze where you feel like you're being, sometimes mazes you feel like because there's so many people behind you.
Mazes, they're back and forth.
You're back and forth, and you're kind of ushered through, whereas this, we want people to study the sets and the art direction and the walkers, and we want them to feel like they've stepped into the show, because that's what we wanted for the Halloween Horror Nights attraction, and now it's tenfold. You know?
Good question here.
Most theme park attractions are pretty much all automated, you know, roller coasters, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. What do you think of the challenges of having an attraction that's so heavily reliant on actors that are going to be there year-round?
And the pace of people walking through it is entirely different. I've designed rides in my life. I designed the Mummy ride here in this park, and when you're designing a ride, you know exactly where the audience is going to be, second to second, millisecond to millisecond. It's very, very, very different when you're doing a walkthrough attraction, and people will walk at different paces. And I've seen this time and time and time over the years. Sometimes they'll run, you know, if they're really, really scared. Sometimes they'll go slow and they'll take in all the details. So as a challenge, that makes it a huge challenge for the designers, because you have to have multiple iterations of things. Something like the Dead Inside door, which in our attraction, you know, that's one of the most iconic elements in Walking Dead. We decided to put it in our queue line because we wanted our guests, from the minute they walked into the building, to feel like they were in the world of Walking Dead and the story began, and they were walking in the footsteps of Rick. But you have to understand that, you know, there might be times during the year where people go right down that hallway and they go right into the next room, and it's very fast. There might be times where they're stopping and taking it in more, and it can be highly, highly scrutinized because it is in the queue line. So we had to kind of, in the programming side, develop multiple profiles and multiple shows, if you will, just for that one element. And, you know, there's 12 animated hands in that, so there's like over 30-something functions of that door itself. So when you add up the math on how many things have to get programmed for that one element, you know, which in Horror Nights, when we did it in 2012, was an actor behind a door with a camera going, you know, because that's what you do in a temporary attraction. Here, it's an entirely different ballgame. So, but I think it very much needs to be a walkthrough attraction. I don't think it would, yes, it could have been a ride, but when you think about the show, 99.9% of the time, the survivors, when they need to get from point A to point B, what are they doing? They're walking. And it's scarier because there is no, you know, thing around you to shield you from the threat. You can get this close to everything in the show. That, to me, makes it scary.
I have a question. Sorry. Catherine Womack, LA Weekly. Follow up to what you're just saying. What are the guidelines that you're going to give the actors in terms of how close is too close or not close enough to? And are there barriers, or is it just going to be so that it's...
What our actors are extremely good at, and they constantly amaze me, is one of the most important things about being a walker or any character in something like this is looking like you're out of control, but being in complete control of your body. It's almost like an athletic skill, and that's what they're so good at. And they can get this close. And I've watched, you've seen it, you've watched it, you've gone through mazes with me. And it's breaking down that fourth wall, and it's unexpected. And obviously nobody touches you, but they have to exit with the same energy they enter with. That's also extremely important, because if something's coming at you, and usually we're playing the angles, you're coming at you from your peripheral vision, so you can't see it until it's right here. If you exit, you know, out of character, the whole effect of it is ruined. So we train them as much on their exit as their entrance. You've seen this over the years with how good our guys and girls are at doing this.
And then they'll have, you know, obviously between prosthetics and masks and the things that the performers are wearing that just heightens everything. It's, you know, even when we were doing it today, they didn't even have makeup on when they did close. And you get a little uncomfortable for some reason, and you can't really put your finger on it. But then when they're in the horrible, awesome makeup, it just takes it to a different place. So I think it's brilliant.
We have one more question here, and then I know we have two there and one more, and then I think we'll wrap that, and then we'll move into part 3, which will be anybody who would like to stay to learn how to be a walker. We're going to do a couple of demonstrations with Greg and the walker afterwards. So.
Hi. When Universal Studios announced the casting call for this attraction, I wrote a story about it and put it out there, and I got such a huge response from people emailing me, even though I put all the information, emailing me asking me what you guys were looking for as far as what they needed to do to be a walker. I know you offered, Greg, a few of the tips. You know, we saw the actors come out here about body movement and things like that. But what maybe are the top 3 things that really define a walker?
Well, body movement for sure, specifically because they're selling a character without any diet. You know, they're creating characters. Each of them are creating characters. I know on the show, for prosthetics, you know, because makeup is an additive process, we tend to, you know, look for people that have good bone structure because we're building up on their faces. But that's really it. I mean, it's the physicality of it that sells it. Being able to obviously to take direction, like I had said earlier, because that's very important. But other than that, sometimes people listen on the show. We get thousands and thousands of requests for people to come down and be zombies, and I always think it's interesting because I think once they get there and it's Atlanta and it's 110 degrees and the humidity, I think the idea of being a zombie is much more glamorous. I don't think anybody's ever said zombie and glamorous in the same sentence. The idea of it is much more glamorous, but in this instance, again, you know, I mean, people just they want, you know. I always joke around about the fact that there's two kinds of people in the world. There's one person that stood in front of their mirror with a hairbrush singing when they were a kid, and there's the other kid that did a zombie walk. Yeah. And so you
can do both.
What's that?
I can do both.
There you go. Well, then you're super talented daughter. So people just, you know, there's an innate sort of interest in it, you know.
Is there something that
your daughter's how old?
3.
Your daughter's 3 years old, and he said to her yesterday, "Honey, I have to go to work now. I'm working the Walking Dead." She's like, "Oh, I know how to do that." She's never seen the show, but she went in. 3-year-olds went into a zombie walk. So maybe you'll see her run around the attraction.
Yeah, there must be something innate in our DNA that primarily knows how to do that, though. But I think what also is important, you know, when you're working with actors, and the big difference between a television show and doing it live and an attraction is, like Greg referenced this today, you know, you call cut on the set. You know, and everybody, you know, maybe you film 2 minutes. What's the average length of time? You roll the most. You roll the camera 2 minutes, yeah. Right? You know, and when you're doing it, you know, in our world, and it's a new show every 10 seconds, particularly in the walk-through attraction, you know, just in Horror Nights alone, any performer will do any particular thing we direct maybe 60,000 times during the course of the event. You know, 365-day a year permanent daytime attraction, that's going to be in the millions over time. Yeah. So you're looking for stamina, you know, you're looking for people to approach it almost like you would if you were training for a marathon. But you're also looking for people to bring their own creativity to it within the confines of the brand. So, you know, one of the things we'll really get into when we get into rehearsal in the weeks ahead is, I kind of joked about it, I said, you know, finding a walker within yourself. We're actually really serious about that. Within the role that you're playing, think about how you were killed, you know, and how did that affect you physically. Greg did it out there. He goes, oh, your arms looks like it's broken, which is cool because it gives them a unique physical thing to do. And as long as it's consistent with the brand and the show and the characters are playing, if our performers are able to invest it with their own creativity too, and bring their own physicality to it, they're more invested in their role, and it's going to lead to a better performance.
It's interesting too because something that we don't have the opportunity to do on set. How often do you rehearse with the performers?
Our rehearsal schedule is going to be really intense for this. It's about 2.5 weeks or so.
Yeah, so you have 2.5, 3 weeks for them to develop that. When we're shooting the show, they come in, they go through makeup, they go to set. It's like, okay, this is what you're doing today. I had a friend that was a walker in an episode that I just directed, and his name is Fred Raskin. He edits Quentin Tarantino's movies. He's the biggest zombie fan on the planet. He's like, I'm editing Guardians of the Galaxy, can I come be a zombie? And it was the funniest thing because he was so excited that when we did the first rehearsal, he was like the Flash. As a zombie. I'm not like, dude, I know you're excited. But you know, you gotta remember, just think Dawn of the Dead, think all these movies that you grew up watching, and we dialed it in, but there's an adrenaline rush that the walkers get. And plus, they show up, and you're like, okay, camera's there, Daryl's there, you're coming over here, he's going to kill 3 people with his crossbow, Max is going to be over here, whoever. And then, you know, hit here, land on the ground, you know, they have to sort of process all this within a couple of minutes, and then it's like, okay, we got to shoot, let's go, and you refine it as you go. So it's challenging and it's hard. These guys are going to have it easier and harder. Easier because they're going to know exactly what they're in store for, and they will have all that stuff worked out weeks before the attraction opens on July 4th. But harder because then it's going to be, you know, more than a 2-minute take, like we were saying.
Yeah.
They'll do it for a couple hours and every single day. So I think it's really intriguing to have live performers in a permanent attraction because it's not really done that often. It's only been done a few times that I know of.
Now I think going back to the beginnings of this business in the old days of Coney Island, things like this would have been more typical. But over the years, you don't really see, that year-round scary attraction has kind of disappeared.
Wait, they had a Walking Dead attraction at Coney Island?
Yeah, an attraction called Hell.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry.
Hey guys, speaking of Easter eggs that Greg just mentioned, as a fan of the comic, I know it's very different than the show. Are there going to be any Easter eggs from like the books in the maze that readers can point out that are maybe not in the show?
Well, we're specifically dealing with the show, so the attraction's based on the show. But from an Easter egg perspective, we kind of went crazy, and that's because if you're doing a scene in a hospital or a prison and the environment's trashed and there's paper all over the ground, and you're looking down and there's a newspaper or something, it should mean something. It should be real. It should reference real events and characters in the show. So everywhere you go in the attraction, there are literally hundreds of Easter eggs that we've designed and hidden into the attraction. You'll never find them all because you probably have to crawl.
We'll try.
You'd have to read the floor in a lot of cases. But like if you're in the hospital and there's doctors' names on a directory, they're going to reference doctors, maybe not just from Harrison Memorial Hospital, but maybe other hospitals you've seen on the show.
You know the name. I don't even know the name of the hospital. To me, it was like, that's the hospital where we took 60 bodies and put them outside.
I've seen that episode a few times in my life.
Yeah. And it's funny because there was a thing on the set when we shot, and I remember wanting to try to find the letters to put my dad, because my dad's a doctor, to put his name in one of the doctors on call. And I realized, we're not even shooting that hallway.
Yeah, in the prison, the prison records that might be on the floor, they'll reference, Axel and the prisoners that Rick's group encountered when they first went into prison. But also, props associated with characters, both current characters that are still on the show, and characters who might have, are deceased. So we really had fun with that. We did a heck of a lot of research, and we layered that all through the attraction. I was pointing a few of them out to you.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of them. Yeah, that's great.
But they're not obvious a lot of the times. They're going to take some work. But we know fans of The Walking Dead are going to put in that work.
The question is, you hired approximately about 100 actors to work in the attraction, but how many actors are going to be used in any given day during operation? How many are going to be featured, and how many animatronics also are going to be in the attraction?
There's multiple casts on any given day, depending on the hours of the park. So you might have as much as 3 casts working in any given day. But there's about a dozen live actors in the attraction at all times, and then there's probably triple that for animated figures. If you count every walker that's behind the dead end side door, and there's some horde scenes where we're doing animation and live actors all integrated together, which is pretty. I'm not aware of anybody that's ever done anything like that before. So it's a combination, and there's video elements as well. So.
I think we'll take one more question. Right here.
Hi guys. So as someone who's absolutely terrified of zombies, what's the protocol if someone goes into the attraction and just starts freaking out? Are the walkers given any instruction on backing up and staying in character? Also, along the same vein, do they sign waivers in case someone's fight or flight mode kicks in and they get punched in the face?
We eat them.
It's a real
You can
thing.
see how long I can hold that.
Someone who forces themselves in these
No, it's not like
situations.
when Frankenstein came out in 1931 and they made you sign a waiver to go in and see the movie. No, there's obviously communicating age appropriateness of the attraction is paramount, and that's all done before you ever go inside the attraction now with the marquee and everything else. But like any attraction, there's chicken exits. So if you really don't want to go through it, there's staff that can help you get out and all that stuff. So.
And they won't be dressed as zombies. They'll have chainsaws and axes. But they won't.
Perfect. That's all fine. Zombies, no.
And then the staff.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you very much, you guys. That was great. I hope you guys got a lot of insight and information. And now we go to part 3, which is recap for the press. So anybody who'd like to participate, we'd love for room to spread out. I think we're going to bring Joe back out.
Yeah, bring Joe out.